This video talks about how to create the ogive. It mentions that the third type of graph is going to represent or have in it cumulative. I know we've already talked about that in another video, but I want to point out here in the definition. Again, this is a great definition to put on an index card or an electronic document or something. If it was an index card, I would put ogive on the front, and on the back I would start putting these pieces of information and highlighting some critical pieces. It is a graph that represents the cumulative frequencies. Cumulative is going to accumulate for the classes in this distribution, and then I would make myself a huge note. Be sure to start on the x-axis. Here is an example, and I'm going to ask you to do that one by yourself, but I want to point out where you end up. So here is an ogive. I'm going to go back a page, and I want to show you a frequency polygon. The frequency polygon had its dots based on the frequency, and it said make sure you use the midpoints, and it also said make sure you begin and end on the x-axis. It begins and it ends on the x-axis, but then look at the ogive. The ogive begins on the x-axis, but then it never comes back down because it is accumulating up to the total amount that we are talking about in whatever data value or data set that we're talking about. It gives an example. It says construct this. We will kind of walk through it, and then I'm asking you to go back and try to do it by yourself without looking. And so looking here, it gives us some information, and it's telling us cumulative. Cumulative meaning looking right here on our, I don't know if it's the same data. It is the same data. And so they're using this chart, and right here the first thing they say is less than 99.5. See right here? Less than 99.5. Looking at our chart, how many are less than 99.5? Well, none of them. That's how we can start on the x-axis. So if none of them are less than 99.5, then on our graph at 99.5 we are at 0. We will, you can't see that right now, we will actually start there at the 0. But then, but wait, there's more. So what about 104.5 but less than it? And so notice here, we go up to 104.5. We're not dealing with midpoints. This is not a frequency polygon. This is it's based on the cumulative frequencies. This is called an ogive. And so looking here, when we go up to 145, remember we don't include it. So everything less than that is going to have 2 plus what we had before, which was 0. So at the 104.5, we are at, that's hard to see, they've got a 5, but right here at about 2-ish. Because an ogive is based on cumulative, we're going to keep going up. Now we'll go to 109.5 and less. 109.5 and less, that gets us 10. So over here on our chart, we're going to come right here to 109.5, and we're now at 10. They first put the dots on, and then they connected. The thing I need you to remember is that when we get done, we had 50 data pieces. We better end up accumulating up to 50. And then when we do, our very last data piece will be up here at 50. On the next page, I want to point out a graph along these lines. And then the sentence says cumulative frequency graphs are used to visually represent how many values are below a certain upper class boundary. So you can tell how many are below. You can tell how many are above. It's very cool, interesting. Again, all of these graphs are going to be based on the one that you make will be based on what you're trying to show, what you're trying to convey in your message. This video talked about how to create an ogive, and specifically at the end talked about the reasons, or one of the reasons is that it visually represents how many values are below a certain upper class boundary.